Hello there. Once again, this is Anton from Antonimo Bay, and today I thought I'd maybe run through some of my trade paperbacks. If you're a comic book collector, you probably, if you're like me, you don't like trade paperbacks. But there's comics that you can't get in any other form, and so you wind up getting the trade paperback. But I don't think anybody just goes, "Oh, I'm not going to buy this comic. I'm going to wait for the trade paperback." I think trade paperbacks are like a necessary evil that you just wind up with, and I'm going to share some of my favorite ones. Some of these are really awesome. There's stuff that really means a lot to me. First off here is Ghost World. This came out after the film, which if you haven't seen, I think is fantastic. I really liked it. I liked the comic a lot more. I couldn't believe how fantastic these books were. I read this numerous times. I tracked down some of the other works of Daniel Clowes, and I ended up trying to think of what the book was called. I want to say it's not 8 Ball, but maybe it was 8 Ball. Anyway, it had a bunch of different stories in it, and one of my favorites was a story called Blue Italian Shit. I absolutely love that. Love that story. Can't remember exactly what book that was, but when I lost my first collection, this is the one that I replaced, and this is the one that I still have. And yeah, this book is just fantastic. I could never say enough good about it. And there's no way I can get these in original issues if I could ever find them. It's just a thing of beauty, and I'm glad I still have it. So another trade that I will never be able to get in like regular comic form is these first appearances of the Ninja Turtles, the first issues. These are color as opposed to the original black and white, but oh my gosh, they're so good. There isn't, you don't even have to, I don't have to convince you that these are good. You can see for yourself. This stuff was so fantastic. It started the revolution. This was it. And the fact that I can get it in color now, and I didn't have to like spend a fortune for these, and to have them, this is one of the things is why you got to have a trade every now and then, because there's just no other way to get this stuff. There's your first appearance of April O'Neil. She just worked for Baxter Stockman. She's obviously a lot different than she was in the cartoon. So was Baxter, for that matter. But man, I loved these. After being like a lifelong Turtle fan, I didn't get to read these till like my probably mid-20s, and to see where the Turtles came from after being a lifelong fan, that was almost more than I could handle. These were just so fantastic. I got a few of those. They're so good. Book 2 probably has my favorite cover art. This really reminds me of what they look like on the Nintendo Entertainment System cartridge, which was by far, that was one of my favorite stupid old games. I think this one's got this one does not have the Return of the Shredder. This one's got like Fugitoid and a bunch of stuff in it. It's not my favorite book of the series. It's good, but it's not my favorite. I love Cerebus the Aardvark, so the fact that you got a crossover with Dave Sam already, and you can see the art is changing a lot rapidly into just absolutely gorgeous. They got different artists working at different times, and they improved their own art. There's our man. Cerebus distinctly remembers telling you not to wake him up until sundown. Yeah, I love the way he talks. Love that guy. Yeah, these also speak for themselves. Not my favorite. My favorite is book 4. It actually contains my favorite Ninja Turtles story of all time. Not everybody's favorite, but it's Christmas. It's Leonardo out on his own. They kind of represent this in the film, but Leonardo gets jumped by the Foot Clan, and he literally fights his way all the way back to the apartment. Like the whole issue. He's fighting his way all the way back to the apartment. And he keeps getting more and more injured, more and more taken down. Until they finally just chuck him through the skylight, kind of like they did Raph in the film. And it's just gut-wrenching. Because, like, Shredder's back. It just kills. The Turtles proceed to get their asses royally kicked. Casey makes his appearance. It's all fantastic. But then they do the thing that I think... See, I was raised on a farm, so when the Ninja Turtles leave city and go out to April's farm and spend a long time out there, this is my favorite Ninja Turtles story arc that happens in almost every incarnation. They get thoroughly defeated and they just go live out on a farm for a while and they recover. And for some reason that we just been beaten to death, and now we're in exile and we're recouping, coming back from where we were. That's the most touching Ninja Turtle story for me, and that's the one that I relate to the most. And the fact that it all was on a farm, that just makes it even more at home for me. So yeah, Ninja Turtles book 4, definitely my favorite of the series. They did it in the movie. They did it in the Nickelodeon series. They did it really well in the Nickelodeon series. And like I said, these are books that I could never have ever gotten individually. There's just no way. Another freaking amazing trade is Crossover Classics. I'm not even sure where I picked this one up, but it predates all of the like Marvel versus DC stuff. The big series that they ran, you know, where you had like Wolverine versus Lobo and all this stuff. This was all before that. This was just like different one-shots, and every time that they ever came into contact with each other. And the opening picture of Spider-Man meeting Superman, and yeah, this thing is fantastic. And once again, stuff that you about got to get in a trade, because how are you gonna get this? It's just, how are you gonna get that? This is Daredevil Man Without Fear. I actually originally did have the issues of this, and I lost them in my old collection. But I did acquire it. I had to get it back through a trade. Once again, trade is the necessary evil of the comic book collector. And this was my first exposure to Daredevil at all. And I have always loved this story. I love the art in it. I love the plot in it. The book is just fantastic. This trade was from '94. I remember specifically that I got the Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. And if you play From Dusk to Dawn, is the perfect soundtrack to listen to while you're reading that. Something I always listened to that when I read that book for some reason. Or From Twilight to Starlight, I guess. Is the blue disc from that set. That's what you want to listen to when you're reading that, and it just fits. Sam Keith. I love Sam Keith. I love the Max. This is not the Max. This is Zero Girl. Probably, in my opinion, weirder than the Max. It's just crazy. Circles protect you. Squares are evil. If I remember that right. Yeah, circles will protect you. Squares are evil. So, like, yeah, it's just so bizarre. And the whole, like, makes a puddle of sweat every time she gets confronted by one of these, like, mind villains. Squishy, you know, she just sweats her feet. I don't know, it's really weird. It's a weird, really weird comic. But it's something that I never saw. I never saw issues of, never saw anything like that. I only saw it in trade. So I only own it in trade. Like I said, trades, I don't think anybody just goes, oh my gosh, I want to get a trade. But there's just issues where you're not going to get them unless you get them in a trade. So anyway, and I don't even know why I hate trades. They're just, I guess it's because they're thick. I don't like them. I don't like them that way. The Tick, Naked City. There's no way I'm going to have these in issues. There's no way I'm possibly going to be able to pull those off. This was not my first exposure to the Tick. My first exposure to the Tick was obviously the Tick cartoon. I used to play the Tick Sega Genesis video game, but when I read this was it. I thought this was hands down the best. It's before he gets in my opinion, the Tick gets kind of buried in like side characters later on. And this early stuff where he's just Tick, he's off on his own, he runs into Clark, Oppenheimer, and I think the only person he really has in this is Oedipus, the ninja who like helps him out. He gets a job at the Daily Planet. There's so much like referential satire in this stuff. It's just, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous story. If you've never read Tick stuff, or if you've only read later Tick stuff, please check this out. Night of a Million Zillion Ninjas or whatever is probably one of the best comic book stories in my opinion for comedy. Like, this thing is great. You know, these ninjas have trained for like 2 or 3 weeks to be ninjas, and it's just freaking great. The art is good as well, but it's before Tick got popular, before he was huge, before he was blown up by like Paul the Samurai is like a side character that he had early on, but it's not like one you really get to meet, you know, in current incarnations. He's just like an early on character. And literally this book ends when he meets Arthur. And which, my opinion, I understand why they introduced Arthur. I'm just not a fan of him. And so like the first Tick that was Tick, guy from an insane asylum, that is the best Tick to me. And that's why this book is, it's just to die for. If you don't have it, if you haven't read it, get it, read it. Shaun of the She-Devil, Survival of the Fittest. This was my first introduction to Shauna. That it looked good. I can't remember the artist on this. It was not Bud Rutt. I don't think so. Kari Evans, yeah. He does amazing artwork. He draws amazing dinosaurs. He draws amazing action and violence. And the plot of this is really fun too. And this was one of the first like Jungle Girl type trades that I ever read. Really got me going on the whole Jungle Girl scene. And it's probably why I've gone back and dug through so many like old stuff trying to track down some of these older Jungle Girl comics. This stuff was just good. And this was one of the series that let me down that path. So I always loved dinosaurs. And so when you got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of raptors, machine guns, it's just good stuff. Absolutely fantastic. Now I'm sure here's a trade that everybody has seen. Everybody here, as I'm sure, has read Watchmen. The movie is decent. I read this. This is one of my early comic books that I ever read. When I was starting heavily to collect, everybody was like, "Oh, you got to read Watchmen," and I read Watchmen, and I read it over a series of several nights. I only read it from like 10 o'clock on, because that's when you should read Watchmen, is in the middle of the night. And it deserves every bit of credit that it ever gets. And if there's anybody out there who hasn't read it, I'd be surprised. And if you haven't, you got to do it. You got to go read Watchmen once. But it's a book you're only going to find in a trade, because you're just not going to find it. American Dream is another trade I've got that I have never seen the issues for. It's from the Marvel's 2 Future line. It's Captain America's, I think it's the daughter of Captain America. Just a lot of fun. The character concept is great. The art is pretty darn good. The fact that it takes place in the future, you know, and the timeline is it's got like a decent future history timeline. But it's something I've never seen regular issues of. So it's a trade you have to have, because where else are you going to find it? I snagged these. This is Marvel Romance. I picked these up when what was that store? Hastings was closing. And it is reprints of old Marvel Romance comics, which are both hilarious and strange to read, but really like a weird snapshot of the time and the day and age when this stuff was written. I couldn't believe a lot of it. I was like, wow. And if you've never read some old romance comics, pick some up because they are weird. They are very, very weird. And this is just a nice trade of a lot of them. That's not the best part, though. The best part is Marvel's Romance Redux, which I think exists only in a trade. And it's literally them taking the exact same stories from this Marvel series and putting new dialogue to it. It is great. Yeah, it's the exact same books. They just changed all the word bubbles and wrote completely new stories. And they are messed up. They are ridiculous. They are hilarious. Absolutely freaking hilarious. I can't recommend these enough. They are a kill. Looking for one particular line. I'm never gonna find it. Not when you're looking for it. Anyway, yeah, that you gotta get that. Find that, read it. Couple of trades that I really appreciate is the New Warriors volumes 1 and 2. And the reason I appreciate them, now these are issues that I can totally go get. However, to carry through the New Warrior stories from their first like 6 issues or whatever, they do some crossover work with like Thor. And so you got to get those issues of Thor too, which are not as easy to get your hands on as early New Warriors. So to pick up the New Warriors trade, you're going to get like Thor, I think 412 and 413. Or 411 and 412, yeah. And it's the fact that they pack it in with there, it makes it so much easier to get your hands on. Because, oh my god, tracking down old Thors can sometimes be a real pain. Alright, here's one that I did actually... most of the times I say there's no way I could get these regularly. I do remember seeing Bones on the shelf, and this is one series I did wait to get them in a trade paperback. But I think that actually turned out to be a lot of the downfall of Bone. I feel like the book was doing really well, but it was doing even better at being sold at like Barnes and Nobles and different bookstores in trade forms. And I think that hurt the series because they ended up just like, okay, the Rockjaw series in here. It's like a book 5. This line shouldn't have gone on that long. This should have been like a 2-issue thing or a 3-issue thing. Instead, they turn it into like a huge, thick story arc just so that they can print out the Rockjaw series or the Rockjaw saga and print it out like that. When really, I do think it eventually did hurt the storyline from Bone, and it makes makes some of the later chapters much more laborious to read. Like the first 3 or 4 chapters, if you get through this thing, man, you're gonna fly through this book because it is so good. And then it really, once it got that popular, it started to really hit like mud moving through some of it. But you can pick one of these up. This was $40. Pretty sure I got it for $25 on a sale. Fantastic thing. You're not going to be able to find those in issues worth a damn anyway. So, some She-Hulk. I had a terrible time when you don't have access to a steady comic book shop. Being able to pick up trades like sometime you go to Hastings or whatever really works. And even though I'm like a huge She-Hulk fan, but I was never into her newer stuff as much, this was the way I could get into it. I could just snag a thing and be right going along with it. Otherwise, these were such a pain to get your hands on. For me, if you don't have access to a comic book store, especially in a small town or whatever, you know, some of these is going to be the only way you're going to get it done. Speaking of books you're never going to buy or never going to be able to find, I'll never be able to find, that I really enjoyed. Legions of Superheroes, Cosmic Boy, Lightning Boy, Saturn Girl. This is my first exposure to a lot of them, and I was really impressed. I think somebody gave me this, or I bought it somewhere really cheap. And it's one of those DC phone book versions. But the stuff is great. I mean, you've got like some sort of metallic caterpillar. You got space helmets. It's got a lot of really, really good. Basically take Superman or Superboy and blend it with a whole bunch of Planet comics covers. And that's what all of these were. And it's really good. It's black and white, which is kind of sad. But this old Legions of Superhero stuff, really good. There's just no way you're going to get it any other way. So I was super, super jazzed to get this, and didn't think it would be as good as it was, and it's really good. This is just like She-Hulk. This is another character that I like, but it was so hard to get issues when you don't have a standard comic book or a regular comic book store going on in your town. And I loved Carol Danvers. I've always loved Carol Danvers. But gosh, I liked her so much more as Miss Marvel. I was never that thrilled when she took up the Captain Marvel title, and still am not. I still wish that she could just be Miss Marvel, because I loved the suit. I loved her character in this, her like post-military stuff. I really liked Miss Marvel better than I like her as Captain Marvel, but it's issues that I had to get in trade because they just didn't exist. And a series that absolutely loved the trade paperback scene was Exiles. Seems like they did better selling trades than they did the issues, because this is like a book they just love to put into trades. Oh my gosh. And of course, you know, you get what made this series great was because it has all the Age of Apocalypse characters, or a lot of them. Blink from the Age of Apocalypse was still alive here. Character that everybody loved, that, you know, Marvel had foolishly killed off, I think just like three issues after her first appearance in Uncanny X-Men 316 or 317. So, and the fact that they brought Morph back, this basically the variation of Morph from the AOA, was just great. You got Magic running around in here, another very beloved character who's very dead. It was a great book. But it's a book that, oh my gosh, it's like they just made them just to put them into trade paperback volumes. Another old DC showcase, The Phantom Stranger. I was not familiar with The Phantom Stranger until I got this book, and now I love The Phantom Stranger. These are creepy. They're like little horror stories, and The Phantom Stranger is just kind of your guide through the horror story. It reminds me of a lot of old horror comics, like from, excuse me, like from EC and stuff like that have been reprinted. And it's good stuff. And it's stuff that I don't think you're gonna find. I mean, you're gonna have hell of a lot of time fighting that. Compassion Kid. It's just stuff that's hard to get your hands on, and that's why it's another necessary evil of the trade paperback thing. Oh, let's see here. Here's another book that trade paperback is the only way to go. I absolutely love Cerebus. I absolutely love Dave Sims' work in the first 4 novels of this. Definitely. This stuff is beautiful. The first trade paperback of Cerebus is not that great. He's a barbarian aardvark, is all he is. And boy, then High Society hits, and you get some of the best political satire. You get comedy. You get the Moonroach. You get Cerebus talking third person all the time. It's brilliant. I can't even express how brilliant this is. You get a lot of Looney Tunes characters too. You got 2 guys that are basically like Yosemite Sam. talking to each other all the time, and they read that way. You get who's that guy? Foghorn Leghorn, the albino dude, Elrod the albino in this series is Foghorn Leghorn, and that is a thing of beauty. Those went right into Church and State, which is even better, because if you thought Cerebus was, great as a bastard politician, wait till you try Cerebus as a bastard pope. He actually becomes pope. He's awful. He's the hero of the story, but he is so terrible. Makes you wonder how they... I don't know, it's just crazy how they wrote it. It's like he's not a likable guy, but he is the star of the book. So you're stuck with him. But they're fantastic. I can't say enough about these. The series, for me anyway, kind of petered out after this. And it was very hard to get through like Jaka's story. Mothers and Daughters was like pulling teeth. And after that, I think there was a couple others, and clear up to like the end, which the last few volumes were pretty good, but they got really hard to read. These though, the first 4, primarily High Society and the 2 volumes of Church and State, are just beautiful reads at any point, and stuff I highly recommend, and stuff that would take forever and cost a fortune and be impossible to get if it wasn't for trade paperbacks. So these have been some of my favorite trade paperbacks. It's stuff that, God, they don't look right putting them in a box. They're the wrong shape. This isn't the size of a comic book, and that pisses me off, but it is what it is, and that's why you wind up buying trades, and that's why you own them, even though they're the wrong size sometimes. It's just one of the necessary evils of having a comic book collection, is you're going to find yourself inadvertently loaded down with a bunch of really thick phone book type trade paperbacks. And I'm not happy about it, but I'm happy to have the stories. Anyway, that's my story. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you later. Bye.